How did the world's two biggest economies reach this shockingly high level of trade war? Let's examine the complete US-China trade war timeline, from Donald Trump's first session to the Biden administration's tariffs to the second term of the Trump administration, starting from the 10% fentanyl tariff in February to China's counter-controls on rare earth elements in October. The conflict began not with a bang, but with a strategic volley of tariffs, rooted in American concerns over trade deficits and intellectual property theft. In January 2018, the U.S. fired the first shot, imposing tariffs on imported solar panels and washing machines. A couple of months later, in March 2018, the action escalated significantly. The U.S. announced steep tariffs of 25% on steel and 10% on aluminum imports, citing national security concerns. China's response was immediate and focused. It retaliated with tariffs on 128 American products, including aluminum, airplanes, cars, pork, and the critically important U.S. commodity, soybeans. Over March and April 2018, the U.S. widened its focus, initiating a major investigation over intellectual property concerns and proposing tariffs on up to $60 billion of Chinese goods. China countered almost instantly, announcing additional 25% tariffs on 106 U.S. products, squarely targeting American agriculture and manufacturing. The trade war officially entered its intense phase over July and August 2018. The U.S. imposed tariffs in two waves, a total of 25% on $50 billion worth of Chinese imports. In lockstep, China retaliated with matching 25% tariffs on $50 billion of U.S. exports. The cycle of escalation was fully underway. The tension peaked in September 2018 when the U.S. imposed a 10% tariff on a massive third list of Chinese imports worth $200 billion and scheduled it to rise to 25% shortly thereafter. China's predictable counter was tariffs on $60 billion of U.S. goods. After months of contentious negotiations, the trade war reached a breaking point in May 2019. With talks stalled, the U.S. made good on its threat and raised the tariff rate on that $200 billion list from 10% to 25%. China responded by raising tariffs on a wide range of U.S. goods, demonstrating its willingness to endure pain in a protracted fight. Then, in September 2019, the U.S. applied a new 15% tariff on a fourth list of goods, valued at $120 billion. And China again retaliated with new tariffs on some U.S. exports. This tit-for-tat had become the defining feature of the global trade system. A period of slight de-escalation arrived in January 2020 with the signing of the Phase 1 trade deal. The U.S. halved the September 2019 tariffs from 15% to 7.5%. In return, China pledged to dramatically increase purchases of U.S. goods and services, a target it ultimately failed to meet due to a confluence of factors including the COVID-19 pandemic. Crucially, most of the existing tariffs from both sides remained in place, solidifying the new trade barriers. In a new wave of targeted actions years later, the Biden administration in April 2024 shifted the focus to strategic future-facing industries. The U.S. kept most original tariffs in place but added dramatic new ones. Electric vehicle tariffs were raised to a prohibitive 100%, with new tariffs of 50% placed on solar cells and semiconductors. China vowed to take resolute measures in response. The battle had moved from simple goods to the technology of tomorrow. This year ushers in a dramatic re-escalation under the second Trump administration, quickly shifting the trade war into overdrive. This new phase began in February 2025, when the U.S. imposed a 10% tariff on all imports from China, citing concerns over the flow of fentanyl, with the tariffs taking effect on February 4th. China immediately retaliated, imposing 10 to 15% tariffs on U.S. energy and certain large agricultural products, alongside announcing new export controls on critical minerals and duties on items like U.S. coal and agricultural machinery. The pace accelerated in March 2025 as the U.S. announced an additional 10% tariff, doubling the rate to 20% on all Chinese imports. China swiftly countered by imposing another 10 to 15% tariff on U.S. agricultural exports and restricting exports to 15 U.S. firms. The situation reached a sharp peak in April 2025. The US imposed an additional 34% duties on all Chinese imports, taking the total tariff to 54%, and then dramatically increased the total rate to 145% on April 9th. China's response was equally sharp. It imposed a matching 34% tariff on US goods on April 4th, filed a complaint with the WTO, raised its retaliatory tariff to 84% on US goods on April 9th, and then increased its tariffs to 125% on April 11th. A brief tariff truce was reached in May 2025, with the US reducing the tariffs on Chinese goods from 145% to 30% for a 90-day period, a gesture reciprocated by China, which reduced its tariffs on US imports from 125% to 10%. However, the pressure points continued, with the US raising aluminum and steel tariffs to 50% in June 2025, and then suspending the duty-free de minimis exemption for all countries in August 2025. By October 2025, the threat level rose again as the US warned of an additional 100% tariff starting November 1st and imposed new fees on Chinese vessels entering US ports. China reacted by expanding its export controls on rare earth elements, and its Ministry of Transport announced new port service fees on US-owned vessels, matching the US maritime measure. The repercussions of this ongoing conflict were not limited to Washington and Beijing. The sudden introduction of tariffs shattered the established order of global supply chains. Companies worldwide undertook a massive and expensive effort to diversify their sourcing, shifting production out of China to countries in Southeast Asia and Mexico. These bystander economies often saw a surge in trade, acting as a crucial but temporary buffer. For the U.S. economy, the trade war was characterized by higher costs that research indicates were largely borne by American importers and consumers. Prices rose, and entire sectors, most notably U.S. agriculture, were severely disadvantaged as they lost their largest foreign market to competitors like Brazil. In China, the tariffs were a major drag on the export-driven economy, accelerating its strategic pivot towards achieving technological self-sufficiency and emphasizing domestic consumption. The initial trade war has morphed into a deeper technological and geopolitical rivalry, where access to advanced components like semiconductors and critical minerals has become the new front line. The US-China trade war proved that economic confrontation is a complex, costly, and unpredictable tool. The era of frictionless trade between the world's superpowers is over. The tariffs imposed and the countermeasures taken have permanently fractured global commerce, leaving a legacy of increased uncertainty and higher prices. What began as a dispute over goods and intellectual property has resulted in a new global economic order, one where strategic competition is paramount and the relationship between the world's two largest economies remains defined by enduring friction.